was thinking of naming this blog Things to Be Optimistic About, but then I realized I wouldn't have a whole lot of entries. There's a lot of things to be pessimistic about in this world, and here's one of them. Petroleum. Price of oil. There's no doubt that oil is going to become more expensive in the future. Scary expensive. People who study petroleum tell us that there are two kinds of petroleum, the easy kind to extract and the hard kind. The easy kind is basically the kind of oil that squirts out of the ground when you dig a hole. We've used up probably the majority of that type of oil. The difficult kind is the kind that it takes more work to extract, such as deep well drilling, which we already know is dangerous and expensive, and the kind of oil that comes from shale, or the very crude type of oil which takes a lot of expense to refine. If you believe people who are saying that all we have to do is drill, baby, drill, and gasoline is going to go down to $2 a gallon, you're an idiot. Okay, here's the optimistic part. Electric cars. A while ago, I read an article about this guy named Shai Agassi. I hope I pronounced that right. He started a company called A Better Place. Here's his idea. Electric cars. Not only electric cars, but also the infrastructure to support it, which is a network of changing stations. This changing station is just a place that looks like a car wash. You drive the car in, the battery gets changed by this nifty machine that comes up and automatically puts a new battery in, and you're done within about a minute. Now to me, this just sounds like a great idea. It sounds like a great idea. Because you don't have to wait for the thing to recharge, which is like my pet peeve about batteries, because you have to recharge them, it takes overnight. His other idea is that he wants to charge 8 cents per mile. That's for everything. That's for the maintenance of the car, that's for, all the battery changing. It's like, it's kind of like phone charges. You just get charged per mile that you drive. 8 cents per mile. Now that's pretty good if you consider the fact that a rough estimate of how much it costs to run a gasoline car is about 12 cents per mile. I was curious about the energy use of gasoline versus electric, so I want to propose a new unit of energy called the Clebo. What's a Clebo? A Clebo is the drive between Cleveland and Boston. That's about 600 miles. Why did I choose 600 miles? Because on average, a barrel of oil will yield about 25 gallons of gasoline. That varies, of course, depending on the type of crude it is, so on and so forth. But on average, rough figure, let's say a barrel of oil is 25 gallons. And 25 gallons will get you from Cleveland to Boston if you're driving a car that gets about 24 miles per gallon, which is, I think that's a pretty decent rough average over all the cars that you can get nowadays. So the Clebo unit is equivalent, roughly, to a barrel of oil. Now, I took 3 different electric cars as examples. The Better Place electric car, the Tesla Roadster, and the new Chevy Volt. Which, by the way, I think the Volt is a great car because you don't have to worry so much about recharging it because it gives you an auxiliary gasoline-powered motor in case you run out of power. Great idea. So, the Better Place car has a battery that is a 24 kilowatt hour battery. And what does 24 kilowatt hour mean? The Better Place people claim it'll get you 100 miles per charge. And so one Clebo, that's 6 charges. The Tesla Roadster has a battery that'll get you 53 kilowatt hours, and they claim that'll get you 244 miles. And that's 2.5 charges for one Clebo. The Chevy Volt has an 8 kilowatt hour battery, 35 mile range, that's 17 charges per Clebo. By the way, there are critics of electric powered cars out there telling you that electric cars will never work because the energy density of gasoline is so much better than with battery-powered cars, which is true if you look at it that way. I mean, a one Clevo is only 2 tanks of gas, 17 batteries for the same amount of energy, and that's a big difference. But what's the consumer care about? The consumer cares about how much he pays. The consumer cares about the hassle factor of recharging batteries. Also, you know, a big battery does take up a little bit of extra space in your car. But the people who are those critics are generally people who are associated with the petroleum industry. If you consider one Clevo, the amount of energy for one Clevo, the Tesla, with the Tesla it's 132 kilowatt hours, with the Volt it's 136 kilowatt hours. And if you consider how much that would cost as kilowatt hours from your power company, even at 12 cents a kilowatt hour, which is pretty expensive, that's like $16.50 for a Clevo. That's 3 cents per mile. 3 cents per mile. Just for the power. Plus, of course, I know you have to consider the fact that it's not perfectly efficient. All those kilowatt hours aren't necessarily going into driving the car. But still, not too bad, eh? How much pollution is really produced by an electric car if you consider you're using a coal plant to power the battery compared to a gasoline car? Well, supposedly gasoline produces 20 pounds per gallon of carbon dioxide. Now that, I had to read over and over, 20 pounds per gallon carbon dioxide, that's what everybody seems to be so concerned with these days. There's also nitrous oxides, there's carbon monoxide, but just as a matter of comparison, I just decided to take CO2. 20 pounds per gallon. Wow. So that is 500 pounds of CO2 you're producing in one Clevo. And if you consider coal, dirty coal, the coal you get from Ohio, the coal that's burned in Ohio, is 1.4 pounds per kilowatt hour on average. And if you consider 132 kilowatt hours, which is one Clevo on a Tesla Roadster, that's 200 pounds. So even if you consider coal as your power source, you're producing less carbon dioxide than with gasoline. So the thing with electric cars is you don't have to use coal. Your ultimate source of power can be anything. I think we're kind of at a turning point because the cost of running an electric car is roughly the same as the cost of driving a gasoline-powered car. And the cost of gas is going to go nowhere but up. And the cost of electric cars and what it would take to maintain and run them, I'm sure, is going to go down. I predict in the future you're going to have an electric car. 10 to 20 years, you're going to be driving an electric car. And you're going to be pleased with it because they have great acceleration, they're fun to drive, and if your car is hooked up to a solar plant, you don't create any pollution with it. Okay, this time I unplug the fucking refrigerator.